If this politically implied nation concept was true, we would not be dictated to and subjected by the Crown Temple through its bankers and its attorneys. The USA entity and its administrators are controlled by and manipulated by the private foreign for-profit power, and the unlawful federal U.S. government is their pawnbroker. So whenever you're dealing with any of the agencies, you're a pawn, and they're pawnbrokers. So this is just to remind people, as people woke up and then you see them offering people, well, if you authenticate the birth certificate, bank bond, we're going to give you your candy back. Even your Halloween candy that we took from 2 years ago. And your mask too, all this stuff. And we really believe them. You know, so they have these different stages of pseudo offer for people who wake up at different degrees. And this is why you see over the years, I've said, you know, don't try to capture the straw man, choke him. Yes. So, the USA entity and its administrators are controlled and manipulated by the foreign for-profit power, and the unlawful federal U.S. government is their pawnbroker. The bankers and bar attorneys operating within the USA jurisdiction, and don't confuse their jurisdiction with the land, although they're operating on the land. Are we clear? Clear. Are a profiteering and private franchise bound in oaths and allegiance to the Crown at Chancery, the Crown Temple Church, and its chancel, located at Chancery Lane, being a manipulative body of elite bankers and attorneys from the independent city of London at England, and who violate the supreme law, organic constitution in America, by imposing fraudulent and alleged legal but not totally unlawful contracts, which have been and are imposed under a color of law upon the American people. The Crown's banks rule the Temple Church, and the attorneys carry out their unum sanctum barratry policies and feudal law orders by controlling their targeted victims' judiciary. Are we clear? Clear. So when they're talking to you and the subdivision agencies of the municipalities are speaking to you, their missionary work is to denationalize you. And this is why you see them resisting when people nationalize. Why? Because it goes to the heart of the system from centuries back, not present. Are we clear? But guess what? That's your only cure. Are we clear? Clear. But at the same time, many of you know that most people didn't have faith in Noble Drew Ali when Drew Ali told them, if you don't do anything else, declare your nationality, and they start picking up these offers that the Europeans were making. Well, see, if you do the UCCs and the financial statement, we're going to give you some apples. And we're going to let you get your hands in this bottomless pit account. Just sign here. And what happens when you make a pact with them demons? You think you're dealing with one layer of the onion. And ain't nobody told you about the Chancery Court, did they? I just want to make this mention to you all, for something you to think about. And if you all decide to do a little bit more research and write about it, now you understand what happened to that European woman who completed and perfected all the processes under the UCCs, and they locked her up. And they took her to ecclesiastical court and closed all doors. Yes, and closed all doors, and no one was allowed to be present. And the world spoke out, and that's the only reason why they didn't disappear her. Because that's what she dug up into, and still didn't figure out that's what she dug up into. In other words, the rabbit hole is deeper than you think it is. You know, but again, so we unpeeled some more of the onion for you. So when you look at these different processes that they're offering you, making you think that they're liberating you, I think you should think again. And if you do whatever you do, at least know what you're doing, at least. And so you can see some of the players behind the door. Are we clear? Mm-hmm. All right, so when you read your zodiac constitution, again, you're going to look at it with different eyes, aren't you? But you're also going to recognize while some people who claim to be loving Noble Drawley pretend that they don't understand what CMB Bey did and why he did it. And will condemn and act like, because they know that most of these people don't know these chamber lessons. Do you understand? Oh, they have some stuff, but you won't see them sharing this information with them Moors. Talking about they love the Prophet Noble Drawley. Yeah, right. Drawley told you and warned you, he said, be careful, Moors. Some of your own brothers and sisters wearing turbans and fezes will be trying to put you back into slavery. And he said, the half ain't been told. So when they go in the attic chamber, they get all this, they know it. But you don't see them talking this stuff. They will attack anybody who talks this stuff. So we just wanted to share this with you because me and Dr. Naila had a good conversation with a lot of people the other night. Anyway, are there any other questions? Go ahead, give the brother a mic.
May I back you up?
Stand the mic, back me up.
Oh, right.
Islam.
Brother Taj, you had mentioned attorney, zodiac constitution, and so I wanted to just make a few quick correlations from the Quran question for Moorish Americans, the one-on-one questionnaire, number 36. Well, let's start with 35. Where do we get the name Jesus?
From the East.
And I answered yes, Mother Delilah, from the East. And number 36, what does the name Jesus mean?
Jesus means justice.
Islam. So, and with that, Brother Taj had also mentioned attorney. So in Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition, we got page 163. That's PDF page 239. And you have a term. And it's telling you, some of them is feudal law, for example, for a turn, which is a verb, to turn over, to transfer. So then you had also brought up the temple courts. So it made me think of Matthew 21, 12 and 13.
Of course.
When Jesus turns over the money changers table. So now that we know justice turns over the money changers table, when we know this information, we can be the justice. When Brother Taj reiterates, when it says in the Bible, when ye shall know the truth will set you free, because when you know the truth, you can be the truth. So therefore, you setting yourself free, and you are that justice.
Yes.
Setting yourself free, turning the money changers table. So, Islam, I use the floor.
Now you see also, when you go into Black's Law Dictionary, in any good law dictionary, it says when you hire an attorney, you give up your birthright. How does that convert? Attorney is really an officer of the court.
Yes.
And his obligation, oath,
Yes.
is to the court, not to you.
Yes. Oh, I forgot one thing.
And you give, go ahead.
I'm sorry. You had mentioned Zodiac Constitution. That was Article 7. The Moorish Americans' freedom and legal in the Christian Union courtroom. In the Christian Union courtroom, the Moors cannot be forced to remove their red fez from their heads, nor can they be forced to raise their hand to take an oath over the Christian Bible. Neither can Moors, the Beys, and Ills employ quote-unquote white or quote-unquote Negro lawyers to represent them. And I'll yield the floor there.
All right.
Article 7 of the Zodiac Constitution.
Because when you do, you give them your birthright. Now, and even them tokens, do they tell these people that they are members of the Roman Curia?
No.
And that their allegiance and oath is really to the crown?
They don't admit that, no.
Yeah, see, but if you know that, you're supposed to know, aren't you?
And interchange appropriate.
And keep this in mind. Now, you understand appropriate persona?
Yes.
In one's own proper person, because if not, and you give that lawyer leave,
We admit.
you admit the jurisdiction.
Yes.
And what they do, have jurisdiction over your estate and start screwing you.
Islam.
After they drain all your finances.
Islam.
And we be talking about, I had to hire him because he knew law. Our people. Constitution, supreme law of land, with the treaties in 7 articles, 10 Bill of Rights.
Yes.
This is amazing, isn't it?
Islam.
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 So, a term from the Anglo-French, a turner, meaning to transfer allegiance to a tenant to another lord. From Old French, a turner, meaning to turn.
Indeed.
Yes. Arrange, from a two-turner, to turn, to agree to be the tenant to a new landlord or owner of the same property. I'm gonna get an attorney because I want to be the property. Intended of my rights.
Brother Taj, not to interrupt. This
go ahead.
I didn't want to.
Go ahead.
Moorish near
Islam Mo.
So that's Brother Yusuf, that's assistant Brother Cujo up there in Canada.
Yes, Islam Moabites.
If y'all hear a little noise, I'm trying to cover it up, but he wanted to be in class, so I.
Yes, that's fine.
You know.
Yes.
Set that like
Islam Moabites of the Canaan land. Love you all.
He's a mass corporation too. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, indeed.
So, you comprehend why in the organic constitution for the United States that an attorney cannot hold office by law? And now do you understand why almost every alleged senator and congressman are attorneys now? Because they overthrew the republic to enforce the circle court, the circle church, the chancel. And the people have been continuously losing, haven't they?
Yes, they have. Yes, it's fine.
When you understand that, and you understand Martin Luther King as an example, who they were celebrating the other day, being a 33-degree Mason, and if you go look at his speeches again, you will see, being a Mason, that he was throwing out little bits and keys. Because he recognized he was going to be neutralized. Right. But it'd been better if he just took the refrigerator off the door off the refrigerator and just let it all out. Put it in writing. Because once you're signaled, you will be neutralized.
Yes.
You know, so what you got to lose? Because you lost already. Anyway, so these words you're going to get used to.
Islam.
Go ahead, give it the mic.
Oh, here we go.
Now, courts. Looks like you go to the courts, right? And I'll read this and then we'll go over, right? We'll deal with some questions.
Indeed.
Court is a palace, the place of residence of a king or sovereign prince. So this is why when you walk into those places and you call them courts and you think that you're in a place where justice is given and you just walk before the kings of England.
Indeed.
Now you understand the kingship oligarchy that they set up when they adjourned Sine Die, 1861. And then you go into these trading venues and call them courts. And you said, I'm in the palace of the king. Then you're going to talk about your rights. You don't get it? You know, and again, these people with authority and claiming to be government are taking advantage of people they know don't understand government and what's really going on. But I wanted to bring this up also to present this argument. You know how we talk sometimes, Dee?
Yeah.
And how a lot of Europeans are exposing a lot of the true history that's taken place under the jurisdiction of the United States Corporation Company, and how I always remind you, take it with a grain of salt because they ain't telling everything. Because if they told everything, you know, they just simply had to pack up and go back to England, Ireland, France, Germany, and to their house, because that's where their sovereignty is. Their sovereignty does not comprise operations at the Maghreb. Because the true heirs are still buried. The brothers and sisters You know, look in the Bible, with the coats of many colors. Where you at? We don't know. Oh no. Yeah, right. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I just wanted to, is this it? I don't know.
Get in the mic.
Push it up. Oh, push it up.
There you go.
All right, in terms of power of attorney, now, when my brother and myself went into the auction block, all right, we were determined that I'm going to announce him as being my power of attorney. In other words, to handle or manage certain things that I need managed because he knows the law as opposed to someone who practiced the law. But I'd like a little clarity in terms of giving someone power of attorney to act or manage for you. Islam?
Yes, and the reason you do is so that they have to come through the estate representative and not deal with you directly, which is also why we tell people to set up a trust. Now, what they've been doing with people who they can find a weak point, what they've been doing is just taking their stuff because they didn't have no fences. So they call it garnishing your pay or garnishing your rights. Arbitrarily just taking your stuff without due process. But when you have someone power of attorney, now they have to go through an administrator, don't they?
Yeah.
And since they're doing human trafficking now, isn't it wise for the person who's administrating your estate to be competent? So that they can't turn the trust? Because they will turn the trust if the administrator is incompetent. You see? But also in a situation like that, when you're dealing with a process where a charge is made against your estate, it is well to have a conscience more because they will do what you would call taking power of attorney, so they can't always attack you. You can revert it, called amicus curiae, to your administrator. And now they got to go by trust law, don't they? They can't make arbitrary stuff, which is their practice, isn't it?
Yes.
That's why they don't want anyone to do this kind of stuff. Because the bridge of the existence of an acknowledgement of your estate causes them to have to process, whereas otherwise they don't or won't. And they'll do arbitrary actions.
Right.
Yeah, get my.
Just one more.
It dawns on you, don't it?
Just one more. So do I need to actually give my brother a piece of paper saying that I've made him?
You don't need to. You can do it on spot. Remember, when you're dealing with when you're dealing with charges, any charge. Any charge is essentially under a commercial venue. And the United States Service Corporation is a commercial venue. It's for human trafficking. Therefore, commercial codes are its operation, not constitutional principle. Although the persons, because they're misrepresenting, you can hold them to that obligation. But they will try at all angles to do a commercial charge against your estate. And so since they have that, then they have to prove that they have a contract with your estate. And this is where your trustee will say, well, I have no problem with your charge that you send the bill to the state. Let me see the contract and introduce it into the record. And furthermore, you're blindsiding us because you didn't introduce it under the rule of discovery earlier.
Right. All right.
Now, if they can't produce it, not only does their position get dismissed, now you got them under liability.
Yes.
And now you can immediately make a claim on them. This is why people don't want us telling people this stuff. Because if they get over themselves and it dawns on them what's really taking place, most people will fix it on their own. People assume that they don't understand this stuff. It's that they're not really looking at the component parts. Starting with the component parts. See, when these people are going to these venues, they're not thinking the Roman Curia. They're walking in them places thinking the separation of church and state, thinking this is constitutional government. And these are feudal operatives. And they're not government.
Right.
Which is again why we keep telling people Clearfield doctrine. Yeah, I read it and it didn't work. What are you talking about? You read it and you didn't understand the concept. How about that?
Right.
You know, and the deal, yeah, but I told them this and they didn't know what I was talking about. No, you didn't know what you read.
That's right.
Every politician knows the Clearfield doctrine. Every person in government that's been claiming taxing people or asking you for any damn thing. No, daggone well, they're not government. But they also know that these people have been miseducated. And so they're going to play these people to the hill. And that's all that's been going on. You know, and so the people don't trust truth. That's one. And so anyone tells the truth, they want you to apologize for telling the truth. Because people are upset because you told the truth. Go ahead.
Now, how can I...
Say it like...
How can I or we can put our property in trust, or what do I read?
What is the psychology, even when you ask the question? I'm going to answer it, but I just wanted to show you. The question, the way it's formed, implies that you got to ask somebody for permission to put your stuff in trust. So first we need to understand what we talked about earlier. The distinction between private and public. Even with the idea, when people begin to figure this stuff out, I need to get a 9-point number or a DIN number and stuff, and apply, and who do you go to? No, you go to you.
I didn't say that.
No, it's not for you. Because the question is not new. It's for other people. Now, what you want to do, we always tell people, and you can get it on like PDF, like Weiss's handbook on trust law. Get familiar with trust law.
It's on the drive.
As an example, right?
It's on the drive.
Well, yeah, you already shared it. And this is back to even where you give people stuff and they ask you again, you know, how many peanut butter sandwiches? And, you know, how do people get peanut butter sandwiches? You see that cabinet you got there? You got Skippy, and you got Crunchy. And let me see, did you open any of them? I didn't dust them off yet.
Yeah.
You know, and this is basically what it is.
Right.
When you really look at this thing, we've been giving people keys for years, or feeding them dinners for years, and then they have these moldy plates of food talking about, when are we getting dessert? And what's for dessert? And how do you eat dessert? Let's not discuss dessert. How about sticking a fork in that dinner? Maybe. Finally. But anyway, back to point. So you want to think public and private. And how does that argument begin? What is it? This is what it is. It must be established with people very clearly the distinction between divine rights, which would relate to inalienable rights, which relates to birthright, distinguished from organizational agreement in club systems where certain privileges are dispensed and sometimes falsely called rights. Those are two different venues. The first is private. The second is public. Are we clear?
Clear.
When you're dealing with an organized government, the rules of operations, which are constitutions, are essentially called public law. From that, you have policies that are harmonic with that, but the public law, or res judicata, or what they call stare decisis, are based in maxims of law,
Yes.
which are not offensive to the principles of the living beings. Are we clear?
Clear.
However, to enforce it or to make claim on it, you must be in treaty with it. This is why when you see international communities doing business, you will see certain political jurisdictions that may use third-party liaisons with another party that they want to do business with because they don't have a direct treaty. But they may have a treaty with the party they use as a liaison to deal with the other party with whom that person or that body politic have a treaty. Although the universal rules of international law are generally rooted in what is called common law principles.
That's
Are we clear? And these are very elementary principles. And so when you're going to use these laws to protect your properties, your rights, your inheritances that pass from generation to generations, international laws have principles or maxims that are in place to secure and protect them from generation to generation. And therefore, for you to be able to call that law to your service, you must be of a nation. Because the laws that protect nations come from people who got nationalities. Now, someone who does not have a nationality can be granted certain privileges but don't have any right to argue those issues. Are we clear?
Clear.
This is why, again, on the political forum, Drali missionary work is to bring our people back into the constitutional fold of government, because we've been outside of that forum. And we've been abused on many levels and constantly because we are outside of the international law forum. And so he says, come and link yourselves back with the families of nations, because we are unlinked. You see, in both pedigree, claim, right of claim, and in actionable enforcement of the Constitution. That's why Drali said, help me in my great missionary work to bring my people back into the constitutional fold of government. You see, so therefore these people need to know what constitutions are. And logically, its relationship to treaties, and make the distinction between the birthright and the agreed privileges that are given to government structure or persons who are representative in government with limitations. That's called delegation of authority order, separation of powers, right? And so you're looking at Article 3, Section 2, diversity. So then you're dealing with consular positions. This is where you get consular courts. When you're dealing with nation states, people of different states having arguments or issues of controversy about lands in the same state or different states, or including foreign states. All right, so now when it comes to the arguments about properties, resources, etc., for you to have a claim, number one, you must be a national. Citizens have certain limited rights, but not that of nationals. Then you have aliens who have certain privileges, but not that of citizens. You see? So you have classifications. As an example, you may find green cards issued from A1 to A19 as an example for people that come from different territories, and the different designations would afford certain privileges that are sometimes loosely referred to as rights. But you can't go outside that venue, because the resources must be preserved for the people of the land, or the nationals, often misconstrued as the citizens. But that's a loose statement. Now, when, and this is the fact, you have government de facto operating, distinguished from government de jure, it is important that you put your stuff in trust, because they're in the business of stealing from you. Knowing that, you set up a trust, but also knowing that they're de facto, that they're going to try to claim authority that they do not have, so they can steal from you. So you must be clear on what is public and what is private. Are we clear? Now, when you or I or anyone establish a trust, private, right? If someone makes a claim against your estate or a charge, send them to your trust. You put your trust. That, well, you won't notice. This is a trust. You know, so the car's in the name of your trust, not yours.
I know it's coming. You got the microphone.
Yeah.
I don't really need it, but
Go ahead.
all right. Peace, family. So, my question is, for the trust, should we use the one that Prophet Noble Drew Ali already set up for the Moorish Temple of America, or still put
Good
it
question.
in a free allodial
Good question.
title, or both?
Now, I'm going to ask you a question so that you can measure your question.
Okay.
Have you read the FBI papers with the infiltration of the Moorish Temple of America, investigation of the Moorish Temple of America?
I haven't fully read it, but I've heard about it.
So if you haven't heard about it, I'm going to suggest to you that you read it.
Okay.
Now, with your intelligence, and you got it going on, because I know you do, And with the people you're around, those kind of pieces of information are available to you. You don't have to dig them up. Some people hide that stuff. But I know the people that you're sitting around don't hide stuff. So, if you read them FBI papers, you would answer that question yourself.
Okay.
Did you ever read the letter that Noble Drawley, our illustrious prophet, commanded to be read before every temple meeting?
Yes, I did read that.
You've been to different temples and have you heard that letter read?
Nope.
All right, Peanut Gallery, no more shouting.
I haven't been to any temple, a matter of fact, but was speaking Brother Hassan.
You might hear it in Canaan land, or you might hear it in Asbury Park.
Yeah.
Or you might have heard it in this territory in Wilmington. You might have heard Grand Sheikah Curia Bey speak on it, but not many others.
Also speaking about them, not to go all y'all talking, but their 101s are corrupted too.
Well, let's look like this. Let's go back to the trust issue.
Okay.
Yeah, please. We're getting there. Let's get back to the trust issue.
Which deals with the commission, if you think so.
Now, our illustrious prophet Noble Drawley set up a trust with the Moorish Temple of Science. The Moorish Science Temple of America exists for 1 year as its corporate name because much of the work that was being done was largely religious and people were coming from all walks of life that weren't clear on the real history. However, they needed protection. And so he used Heard's Law and a religious affidavit to protect the order. So the Moorish Temple of Science, sometimes also called Moorish Holy Temple of Science, is unincorporated. The Moorish Science Temple of America is incorporated, and it's for the protection of the people. He also set up a trust. But I'm going to ask you this question. Have you been hearing at any time people who are Grand Sheiks and Sheikesses of the Moorish Science Temple of America teaching about trust and trust law?
They're not teaching about much from what I've heard from people who actually... They haven't heard much from what I've heard from people who are actually in the temples.
Brother Cujo just mentioned it though.
Now notice that I'm answering your question by getting you to answer it.
Yeah. Well, that's effective.
I'm getting you to answer the question. And it's the same with others. I try to get people to answer questions because what they want to do when it gets into controversy. Todd, you guys said that and it's not true. The prophet didn't say that. The prophet didn't talk about no trust and stuff like that. He talking that trust stuff and that ain't nothing about birthright. They don't know nothing about the trust or what a trust incurs. But yet they claim to be members of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Do you see the point?
Yes.
Prophet also says, protect I, your prophet, and your temples. Also he says, it's your Moorish movement. That's the words of the prophet. Now, how is it that all these Moorish Americans over these years, millions of them, have been losing houses under the Negro Act? Their stuff's been foreclosed, laws, losing land, finance, and everything else, and don't know a daggone thing about trust law, because they don't discuss those things. Isn't that kind of called treason? But nobody goes there, do they?
They got an inkling of it, brother.
Are we answering your question?
Yes.
So, what do we do here at the House of Reawakening Minds? Without people obstructing the flow of information, we're sharing those things which are necessary that the people need to protect their birthright and to protect their rights of inheritance under their nationality, including their liberties, etc. So therefore, you need to know trust law, don't you?
Yes.
You need to know what a trust is, don't you?
Yes.
You need to know the difference between the public trust and the private trust, don't you?
Yes.
You need to know why certain things were done at home and put in your Bible or your Quran and wasn't given to these people out here claiming to be government, don't you?
Yes.
But people don't know that too much anymore, do they?
No.
So they don't know the difference between public and private, do they?
No.
And don't know how to protect their estates, do they?
No.
So again, this is why, again, we're in these subject matters. clarifying these things. So, the Moorish Science Temple of America as an entity existed not since 1913, it exists since 1928. Can you read the back of the authority, please? From the questionnaire? Hear this, you all, and take notes. But it's, that's right. Because I know you got the goodies. I know you got the truth. Because they ain't modified. Our authority, copy, book 521, page 579, State of Illinois, Cook County, subsection, number 10105905, filed for record, Form 1099, Corporation Religious Affidavit of Organization, State of Illinois, Cook, County of Cook, 1928, August 1, p.m., 2:52, and recorded in book. I, Noble Ali, the page in the recorder, Solemnus Conowitz, Moorish Holy Temple of Science, held at Chicago in the County of Cook and State of Illinois on the 20th day of July, AD 1928. For that purpose, the following persons were appointed sheikhs according to the rules and usages of such Moorish Holy Temple of Science, do solemnly swear that at a meeting of the members of the Noble Drawley, Mealy Eels, Small Bay, Lovett Bay, and Foreman Bay, the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, deriving its power and authority from the great Quran of Muhammad to propagate the faith and extend the learning and truth of the great prophet of Ali in America, to appoint and consecrate missionaries of the prophet and to establish the faith of Muhammad in America. And said Moorish Holy Temple of Science adopted as its corporate name the following: Moorish Science Temple of America. And at said meeting, the affiant acted as presiding officer, subscribed and sworn to before me 20th day, Noble Drawley, July AD 1928, Roberta Double Counsel, Condual, Notary Public. See Herd's Revised Statute, Chapter 32, 36, or appointed, or wardens, vestrymen, or whatever name they may adopt. So, now, maintaining the authority and the right to even adopt other names to protect the order. And under Herd's law, the religious affidavit really established government and protect the order.
Yes.
And the affidavit of religion was adopted on what day?
August 1st.
August the 1st of 1928. Does that say 1913?
Nope.
No.
So now we see some things or concepts that people have when they read the questionnaire is kind of not exactly what they think it is it?
Right.
But the prophet was very wise to protect the movement. Do you understand? Not only that, so you can see the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, or the Moorish Temple of Science, is unincorporated. The Moorish Science Temple of America is its corporate name. So the Moorish Temple of Science still exists.
So Moorish Holy
But the corporate activity is done in the Moorish Science Temple of America. So now there has to be a trust, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, there you go. So now someone's supposed to hold up the law, aren't they?
Yes.
Now, if you look at Act 1, it says certain persons are put in power to make law, and they've been telling these people to draw and teach civics.
Right.
And law is civics.
Grand chiefs and the chairman.
So, do you want to put your property in some person's land that's claiming the office and not carrying out the law?
No.
You probably lose your sandwiches.
Brother Taj,
You can trust the truth.
Yeah. You see?
you know, and it says presiding officer.
There you
It
go.
says the president.
No, I see you over there smoking. I smell smoke. And they say,
That's our government.
go ahead, give it a mic because I smell sage.
Oh, man. Islam. I just like to make a couple points of order on the back of our authority. No Patrali, Mealy L, and
Love it,
Bay are all in capital letters.
Of course.
So that they can go in
Because
and
it's
out.
a corporate activity.
Yes.
And so you must know the distinction between public and private.
Yes.
The Moorish Temple of Sciences is ordered for the public, for the private protection.
Yes.
And the Moorish Science Temple of America is to protect their property in the corporate world.
Yes. That's what I've been saying. Okay.
So in order for people to understand what he did, they must know trust law. They can't be sitting around talking about the prophet without understanding law. They would be incompetent.
Islam. Yes.
So when you read the letter that the prophet commanded to read before the Moors, what did he say? He said these people were jealous of his nobility. When the prophet, in relationship to the Moorish Americans of North America, whenever the president or any serious body politic was taking place concerning things that affect us on the international and national level, did Prophet Noble Drew Ali not go to represent the Moorish Divine and National Movement? Not the temple, the Moorish Divine and National Movement.
Yes. Yes.
Not the temple, the Moorish Divine and National Movement.
Yes.
Now do you understand where the tradition of doing writs to communicate with those persons who are controlling your estate come from? With the order of the Great Seal, because it was not being carried out by persons who should have been doing that.
Right.
And persons who should have been doing that have been criticizing or trying to dismiss people who know those rules of government as renegade Moors and stuff. They ain't in the temple.
Radicals.
The nation is out there. Take your places amongst the affairs of men. Is that a club?
No. No.
That's international law. What's the affairs of men? And what would your affairs be? Would your affairs not be Moorish affairs?
That's it.
Yes.
And if you're taking your place amongst the affairs of men, are you not talking international law and consular principles?
Islam.
Therefore, would not the persons who are holding office be empowered to make law and to enforce law?
Yes.
And would they not be empowered to enforce the Constitution with the supreme law of the land?
Islam.
So would these people be confused about what trust and offices of trust are? And if they are confused or have to ask questions, somebody ain't teaching them. Is that correct?
That's right.
So you see where we are? Do you see where we are?
Yeah.
So now let's back up. And I want to bring something to your attention and to everyone else's attention. I'm going to go back to Traficant's speech. And let me see, James Traficant. And I want to show you something. Here we go, we're going into the that's why we tell people to read, please read the congressional records so that you can have a concept of what's going on. Now, when did Drew Ali establish the old Canaanite temple? You all say that loud.
1913 AD.
Do you all notice something that's happened to be correlating with this date, with this paragraph?
Yes.
What is the date that you see there where it says prior to 1913? Do you see that in the congressional record?
Yes.
And does it say most Americans own clear allodial title to property?
Yes.
So Drew Ali told the Moors to enforce the Constitution, go back to that state of mind of your ancient mothers and fathers, right?
Islam.
How come these Moors don't know anything about allodial title? Isn't he setting you up, telling you to have been told that, because he knows that when you start studying, you're going to find these things out?
Yes.
Didn't he tell us to study? To study well, right?
Yes.
And upon that study, and we come back, keep on answering more questions, what did he say? Study yourselves, didn't he?
Yes.
However, the conditions of the Moors don't respect that. Doesn't reflect that has been done, has it? Does it?
Right.
Now let's look at this, you all, and analyze this. Prior to 1913, most Americans owned clear allodial title to property, free and clear of any liens or mortgages until the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. Doesn't it look like that's a countermeasure?
Yes, you did.
Hypothecated. Anybody got a dictionary?
Yes. Which one you need?
How do you feel? You get that mic and tell us what hypothecated means. And then we're going to talk about public and private, right?
Yes.
This must be you must comprehend what you're dealing with when Drew Ali said the Europeans are living off your virtues. What is he talking about? They've hypothecated your property, your rights, even your labor. So you must consciously counter that with a public proclamation, or it's assumed that you've abandoned your estate onto the public forum for them to discharge their private debt pretending to be public officers. And if you understand nationality, you can see through it. But if you don't see through it. Are we clear?
Clear.
Are we clear?
Clear.
Now go ahead.
All right. Hope the sound is good for the family on the Facebook Live. They were saying it was a little off, but here we go. Hypothecate hypothecate is on page 877, Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. The PDF page is 953. Hypothecate, to pledge a thing without delivering the possession of it to the pledgee. Quote, the master, when abroad and in the absence of the owner, may hypothecate the ship, freight, and cargo to raise money requisite for the completion of the voyage.
So what they did, they sold the stuff to an unknown party without telling people. Now you understand why the 14th Amendment, they call you a ship of state. The birth certificate is B-E-R-T-H, and they spell it to the public B-I-R-T-H, and then they tell the public venue where they've been selling these people under the 14th Amendment that your labor is to be presented to them through future taxation. So you don't even own your own labor by virtue of hypothecation.
Yes.
This is why marriage certificates and birth certificates and other instruments are what? Bank bonds, and have been hypothecated and delivered to the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve. Let me read this paragraph all the way out. Prior to 1913, most Americans owned clear allodial title to property free and clear of any liens or mortgages until the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 hypothecated all property within the federal United States to the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve, in which the trustees, stockholders, held legal title. The U.S. citizen, tenant, franchisee, was registered as a beneficiary of the trust via his and her birth certificate. In 1933, the federal United States hypothecated all of the present and future properties, assets, and labor of their subjects, the 14th Amendment U.S. citizen to the Federal Reserve System. What did Noble Drawley say in the Divine Warning by the Prophet for the Nation?
The 14th and 15th Amendment are not for our salvation. I think I'm paraphrasing.
Oh, thank you so much. And we tell people as a rule, please, read the Divine Warning by the Prophet for the Nation. He prepared you before this stuff even happened, because he already knew what was going on. But he already knew if he just said things bluntly, the people wouldn't believe him. So what did he do? He told you the half has not been told. He told you the half has not been told. He told you to study, and he gave you keys. And he knew you would find this out. Knew you would find this out if you studied. And he even set for the charters for all temples that every temple must have a school. Not maybe, not if you feel like it. Must have a school.
And a press.
Where's them schools? Where them schools?
Well, the mothers for right now.
Well, good. And the deal of it is, and all persons that doing the missionaries on their certification of the ministry, it says hedges and the highways.
Right.
And I can show you the documents because I can show you mine, and it's written there clear as day. Does that sound like clubism?
No.
Does not mean that these peoples will be taking this information to the four corners of the world, to all nations?
Yes.
Starting with your own?
Yes.
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
Yes.
And half these people in these communities couldn't even tell you where the Moorish Science Temple of America is. Except for a handful. Now, I'm not condemning anyone. I'm answering your question.
Islam.
But I'm getting you to answer the question.
Absolutely.
So they can say, see what Taji God said? He's creating confusion.
Speaking bad.
He's a renegade. He ain't really a Moor. It's a pedigree. Go ahead, Dr. Naila.
Someone's asking the question. It says, when you say abandon our estate, to what estate are you referring to if we do not own a tangible home?
Law book. Read abandonment. And then absorb this. Abandonment. And this is the advantage when you have people around who really study, you know, because when you study and read for yourself, you don't have to accept what someone says.
Islam.
Me or anyone else. You're supposed to know it for you. Because when Rome comes for his piece of flesh, he's going to talk to you. And he's going to talk to the guy next to you and say, well, yeah, that's my boy. See, because ask him. You can't make your own sandwich? It's called amicus curiae. How many times did people come as amicus curiae and be denied in them venues? Very often. Meaning that if he can't speak for himself, you ain't speaking for him. Although that is a status that is under certain conditions allowed. Go ahead.
Alrighty, Islam. This
Abandonment.
Is
Now, I want to qualify this is for all the listeners. Go down into the counties and the cities, different jurisdictions, into the Register of Deeds and into the books, and you will see that almost all foreclosures are listed as abandonment. They don't say lack of payment, abandonment. Please read abandonment.
Yeah, it's a very long one, but
of course, read it. They need to understand because it probably means far more than they keep thinking it means.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's on page 9 of Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition.
Go ahead.
Page 85 for the PDF version. Abandonment, the surrender, relinquishment, disclaimer, or cession of property or of rights.
Read that again.
The surrender, relinquishment, disclaimer, or cession of property or of rights.
So they think it just means material goods, don't they?
That's what they think.
But it's also rights, isn't it?
Yes.
Continue.
Alrighty, here we go. Stick with the substance.
Now, when you read abandonment, consider these people not using their names but transacting business in the European's name and justifying it because it's been practiced for a couple of generations. And continue to read and see what this is really telling you.
The giving up of a thing absolutely without reference to any particular person or purpose, as throwing a jewel into the highway, leaving a thing to itself as a vessel at sea, vacating property with the intention of not returning so that it may be appropriated by the next corner.
So if you don't claim your estate and you leave it without intention of returning or show any indication whatsoever, you've abandoned your estate, which not only includes property but also rights, and thus the liberties that go with it. Don't get it twisted.
Islam.
So when people keep thinking it's just some physical property of a house, it's also your right of claim to it.
And your body.
So when people listen to these criminals and leave their houses when they get them 192s in the mail and voluntarily leave, then they come and make an adverse claim on your property because you just abandoned your estate. And if you didn't put it in trust and they've already hypothecated, they're making a claim that already established. Now, if you don't make a running claim of an adverse claim, they already have it on the record that your property is hypothecated. Well, I was working and I gave, you ain't paid nothing. Because you used Federal Reserve notes that belong to them. And it was discharged. And they got the record to prove it. Now, you sitting around there talking about what you paid, you ain't paid crap.
That's right.
Well, you ain't read the congressional records? You understand what I'm saying to you? This stuff is not complex. But they're going to tell you about the pharaohs of Egypt.
Yeah.
While standing on the curb with icicles off the left cheek. No, I'm serious. We are full of stuff. We need to get over our egos and start teaching our children the truth of how things work. Start saving our communities from getting gentrified under abandonment.
May I, Brother Taj, may I?
One more thing to assist. And I don't know if our family is actually conscious that we've been practicing a certain specific element of trust. And when the mothers bring child or children, so to speak, when she brings her progeny to the planet, her and that son will decide on who they would think in their heart is competent to take care of their offspring in the case that they may lose their life, and we call it the godparents. So technically, that's the initial parents, the mother and father, being or playing the role of grantor or settlor. And the godparent would be, in this sense, the trustee. And the one that is benefiting from being cared for is the progeny. So we're practicing trust in that, but may not even identify it as such. Are you at the floor?
All right. Now, is it not without comprehension and understanding while the operators of the U.S. corporation company claim the position of parens patriae?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Because they're claiming to be the parent?
Yes.
Yes.
And then they're claiming these ship of states through the birth certificate. And what do we have? These ships moving about, and they're not flying their colors. They're abandoned ships. Then they claim the abandoned ships. You say, oh, look, I'm here. No, you ain't. Yes, I am. No, you ain't. And we don't get it. You see the point?
Yes.
This stuff is not complex. So we need to understand public-private, what it really means, how broad it is in every aspect of everything you do in all parts of life. So this is key. Because I'm coming back to you.
Go ahead.
But I wanted to go around, I wanted to pull some things out of people. When you comprehend that these people who've been claiming to be government are not government, you interchange with them as FOFers, which they are. But they are not loyal trustees, though FOFer is like a trustee, but only in feudal law. There's a distinction. So they're in breach. However, they're operating on arbitrary based on the hypothecation issue, which is tied to the unum sanctum through the barratry operations where they claimed you to be dead. This is why Noble Drawley say black, according to science, means dead. He's not talking the etymology. He's talking about the layered onion of the hypothecation of the theft of your birthright under unum sanctum. You see. But if you don't study, you would never unpeel that onion. But if you fail to make an adverse claim and make it public, they're already operating on an hypothecated bondage system on you. And the bond ain't a chain, it's paperwork. And it's sold around the world. They're called derivatives. Now, so if you don't have an adverse claim ongoing or even prepared when they decide to come get your chickens off the rotisserie, you know, you're saying, oh, I'm here. And you're dead. That's where the civil libera mortuus situation comes in. And so to calm these people down, they have claim to be religious guys marching around talking about 14th Amendment, Negro rights, monkey rights, and citizenship, U.S. citizenship, which is stock. You see? Now, I also, let me see if I want to see the part where they talk about the joint stock trust. Now, if y'all pick it up earlier, show me where the joint stock trust is, because I want the people to see it.
It's on that page, just 1, 2, 3 paragraphs up. The U.S. Congress has passed a law making it illegal.
All right, here it is. The Federal Reserve System is based on the canon law. What is canon law?
Church.
Oh, there you go. So now you see we're going back to Unum Sanctum, aren't we? All right? And the principles of sovereignty protected in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. In fact, the international bankers used a canon law trust as their model, adding stock and naming it a joint stock trust. Write that down. The U.S. Congress, and keep in mind, they're really secret oligarchs that are really trustees on the Unum Sanctum Court, Circle Court, the Circle Church, Chancellor, and all the people's property has already been hypothecated, and everybody acting like they're operating from a level playing field, when all of their rights, even their future rights in labor, has already been sold and hypothecated. So, naming it a joint stock trust, the U.S. Congress had passed a law making it illegal for any legal person to duplicate a joint stock trust in 1873. That's 2 years after they set up the U.S. Democracy Platform, 1871, called the Act of Congress, 1871. And they've taken all of your private property and all of your private rights and put it on the public forum for sale. This is congressional records, y'all. So you better know the distinction between public and private, mustn't you?
Yes. Yes.
So are you going to them for permission to have right to your property, or are you going to make adverse claim?
Adverse claim.
So Drawley says what? If you don't do anything else, declare your nationality. What is that? An adverse claim.
I did that.
So what do? You make a trust, you put all your stuff in it, right? And you have it whenever someone makes a claim. But you can put out a cover statement if you wanted to any of the persons operating as government, so they don't assume you've abandoned your estate. Now you see why we do the proclamation and the name claim? And we give it to anybody and just tell them, use it. Because your stuff has already been hypothecated. But by it existing, when they try to take you through process to liquidate,